last thing before lunch, so hang in there. I know these days are long, needed, but long. I'm going to go over abuse, neglect, and exploitation. I know all of you that have worked in healthcare and especially long-term care for more than a month have heard lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff on abuse and neglect. My hope is that today you'll pick up one thing you didn't know before, and if nothing else, you take away how important it is that we protect our residents. All right, we're looking at the things that we're going to cover today include the key elements of a timely and thorough investigation, understand how we gather facts and conduct investigative interviews, how we document the details of an incident, summarize what observations should be made of the resident and the scene, and discuss how the investigation should proceed past the first 24 hours. So we're going to take a look at the investigative portion of this. We're looking at what is a thorough investigation, who is the best person to do the investigation, and when do we start doing that. The first thing to remember is that an investigation into an incident of a possible abuse or neglect starts immediately. It isn't something that you get off shift at 2 o'clock and as if you're leaving, the resident says that something happened to them that might qualify as abuse, and you go, well, I leave at 2, when I come back in the morning, I'll let somebody know that they told me that. As soon as you're made aware that a resident has a concern or you notice a concern, that has to be reported immediately. You should report any issues directly to your supervisor. If you're in another department outside of nursing, you can always report it to the RN supervisor if your supervisor for your department isn't readily available. We have to be sure that our investigation is unbiased and objective. We can't look at the situation and say, oh, I know Susie Smith's a good CNA and she would never hit Mr. Rogers, so there's really no sense in looking into this because I know without even looking into it that it didn't happen. That doesn't mean that we automatically think what's reported happened. It just means we have to look at every situation as if it was a possibility. A few weeks ago we had a resident who reported that a staff person hit them. And my initial reaction is just that, biased. I don't think it happened. If it did, it was something like, oh, just stop what you're saying and tap on the arm and so forth. But I couldn't say, I'm not going to look into this. I know it doesn't amount to anything, so I'm just going to brush it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. Now, till we went through the whole process, that turned out to be what it was, but we had it investigated, we were able to come to a conclusion and look into everything that was involved. When we start an investigation, we're looking at a bunch of different things. We're looking at observations, interviews, reviewing the record. Those of you, especially in nursing, often get witness statements where we're asking information about a particular situation. That's how we conduct an investigation. It is important that we get information from as many people that may have some knowledge of it so that we can determine what did or did not happen. I know it gets frustrating. I know here in the nursing home for nursing, anytime we find a bruise or some sort of area on a resident that's of an unknown origin, we send out those witness statements. And the fact of the matter is, every one of those areas, we are doing an investigation to ensure that the resident didn't get that area because of abuse. Most of the time, it's not. They bumped in the doorway, or they hit going in bed, they hit it on the side rail or something. But those witness statements are essential so that we can come to a logical conclusion that those areas didn't occur as a result of abuse. As we go through, we're looking at the allegation or incident. It doesn't have to be a licensed nurse that starts the investigation. If a CNA sees something and they report it, we start that right then and there. As I said, we have to investigate everything. We have to thoroughly document them. We have to be able to go a year from now, if a surveyor, if a resident, this will take the case I was talking about, if that resident says to a surveyor, well, you know, that CNA, they hit me, it was like a year ago and they never did anything. We have to be able to pull out and say, yes, we did. Here are the statements we got. Here's the information we got from the resident. Here's any other pieces of information we put together. And this was the conclusion of our investigation. So sometimes we're not just documenting for the very moment, but we're documenting for the future as well. We have to make sure that we do things in a timely manner. Like I said, we are in the nursing home. We report to the Department of Health. In the quarters, they report to the Department of Human Services. Initial abuse allegations have to be reported within the first 2 hours that we're made aware of them. So if a resident says Friday night at 1 a.m. that there was something that happened on the 2 to 10 shift that they felt was abuse, we have till 3 a.m. to report that. It's not a Monday through Friday thing. It's not a only business hours of 8 to 4 thing. It's 2 hours we have to at least get an initial report in. This is what was said. This is what we're doing. We'll follow up with you once we finish our investigation. So time is everything. The first thing we're required to do is ensure the resident is safe and out of harm's way. In that situation, we want to make sure that the resident hasn't had any injuries as a result of the abuse. They're not reporting any emotional difficulties as a result. We also automatically suspend any of the personnel that may be involved in the incident. We're required to show that we are keeping that resident and any other resident safe until we finish our investigation. It's important to know that if someone finds themselves in that situation where an allegation has been made against them, if we investigate it and we're done 2 days later and you've missed 2 days of work, we do pay you for that time. But we're required to ensure that everybody's safe in the meantime. As we said, they must be reported to our governing bodies within the first 2 hours. We have to begin immediately. Any delay can cause valuable information to be lost. If you ask me what I did this morning at 9 o'clock, I can probably tell you, I won't say 100%, but I can probably tell you. If you ask me next Wednesday what I did this Wednesday at 9 o'clock, it is going to be a lot harder for me to come up with everything that I did. That's why we want to get information from people as soon as possible, so that we can get as many details. You know, I went into room 101, then I went in 105, and then I was back up in room 102. Again, you're not going to remember that order days or a week down the line. So the first 24 hours, we're collecting information. We're collecting all that data that we can get about the situation. This includes what the alleged incident was, what was observed. This is where the witness statements come in. If the resident, you know, in this case that I said about the resident thought that somebody had hit them, we're going to do a physical assessment. Is there bruising? Is there redness? Is there anything there that we think may have caused injury to this person? What was the initial response by staff that we spoke to? And as I said, they have to be suspended until the investigation is complete. Again, this is just out of an abundance of caution to ensure people are safe until we can finish the investigation. We want to know where it occurred. And again, details, 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 details. Was it in 104 in the bathroom at 1:30? It's not, we can't say, well, it happened at Shook. We need as much details as possible. And again, here was an example. Did it happen in room 118 at 4 p.m.? Did it occur in the residence room at shift change? When exactly did it occur? Again, the more information you can give us, the more information the resident can give us, the easier it is to come to a determination about the investigation. All individuals may have information. If a resident, for example, has a bruise on their arm that we can't figure out, but they came down to the beauty shop that day, well, they might have bumped their arm in the beauty shop. We don't know. They may have gone to therapy and had something happen there that could explain what happened. So we really want to know everywhere that resident has been so that we can see if there was any piece of that that may give us an explanation. We want to make sure that we have everybody's full names and details. Whenever possible, we try to interview the resident. Even someone with dementia can recall short periods of time. And again, sometimes interviewing the resident helps you determine what happened as well. I interviewed a resident several weeks ago who had told several staff members that staff slap her around. And when you'd say they slap you around, oh yeah, they slap me around. Well, of course, you know, your heart jumps up in your throat, but when I sat down and talked to her for a little bit, we got a rapport going, and then I said, so I hear that you tell people that there's staff that slap you around. And she's like, oh yeah, it happens every day. And I'm like, do you mean like they take their hand and they just slap you? And she's, well, no, I mean that as a figure of speech. Okay, well, there's a really big difference between staff trying to get you to do more things for yourself, which is what she was thinking, and physically harming someone. So again, it depends what perspective the resident is from. This resident has some dementia, so they probably couldn't tell you what they had for breakfast yesterday, but they knew enough about the situation to be able to give that information. Sometimes it's helpful, depending upon the resident, to write down our questions first. What specifically do we want to know about? Sometimes when residents can't identify us by name, they can say, you know, the dietary aide that comes and brings my water pitcher in the afternoon, she's the one with the blonde hair and glasses. You know, that helps us to try to narrow down who we're looking for. We may ask different questions to staff members. During the interview, we try to write down any quotes that the resident has. You know, the information that was given to me about that particular resident were quotes. She says, quote, staff slap her around. I mean, that's a quote. It's not that they're mean to her or they don't like her. The quote was, they slap her. So it's important that we get exactly what the resident is saying. We continue to gather that information. If we can, we have the resident sign their statement. We have them write their statement. That might happen a little bit more frequently in the quarters than it does here in the nursing home, that somebody could write down their thoughts on an incident. We can also do phone interviews if we need to call a staff person at home and get some information, which we've done before as well. So then we're doing more research into the situation. As I said, is there any physical evidence that could help? Is there a bruise? Is there a red mark? Is there something in the room or wherever this occurred at that would help us understand what happened? What equipment was used? Did they use the stand-up lift? Did they use some type of transfer aid? Sometimes it's the oddest things. You know, we had a resident not too long ago who had 3 bruises on her forearm, which would line up with 3 fingers, like somebody grabbed the person. It wasn't until we got a whole bunch of witness statements that we found out that this resident sometimes reaches over and grabs that arm because she's had a stroke on that side and it doesn't move as well, and she often will pick it up and move it, and it lined up right where that would be. Again, I don't know that. People that do direct care, they pick up on those things that we don't necessarily know about. Sometimes it helps to reenact the situation. You know, if it's a fall or equipment issue, sometimes that helps us to see, well, if you were here and you were there, how did we get to here? As I said, we do a physical assessment of the resident. Did we have to do x-rays? Did we have to do a CT scan? Did they have to be sent to the ER for some type of treatment or testing? We also look through the medical chart. You know, if I can see a pattern of things going on that would explain what happened. We look at the nurse's notes, the hospital stuff, we look at anything and everything that we can And as I said, we will also look, if it involves a particular staff person, we might pull their personnel record from Sandy and see, has anything like this ever happened that they've been involved in before. So after the first 24 hours, we're looking to do further investigation, chart, and come to a close of the investigation. We're looking at all kinds of things here. It's important to remember, by virtue of working here at the nursing home, regardless of what position you are in, you're a mandated reporter. So if you're a dietary aide, a activities aide, a maintenance guy, it doesn't matter. If you see something, you're mandated to report it. So it's important that, again, we are legally obligated by the law to report any signs of abuse. Once that first 48 hours are over, we continue to look at the information. Often, depending on what the situation is, several of us will get together, such as perhaps myself, Sandy, Karen, Jeff, somebody else that might be involved, so that we can look at the information. Sometimes we go, we looked at the last 24 hours, but I really think we need to go back and look at the last 72 hours, because I'm not seeing anything in the last 24 hours that explains this to me. We follow up on any new information. We may go back and talk to the resident again. And then if it's a staff member, we will interview them again as well if we're looking for additional information. Understand that we are obligated to make those reports of abuse not just to our governing folks like the Department of Health over here and the Department of Human Services in the quarters, but we are also obligated to make that report to the local police department and also to the Area Agency on Aging. We don't have a choice in that. We can't complete the investigation and then say, hey, just wanted to let you know it wasn't anything. Each of them are required to conduct their own separate investigation. Now the police may ask you to give them additional information. Sometimes, depending on the situation, they'll ask to speak to the people that are involved. Same with the Office of Aging. They may come over and talk to the resident, talk to the staff involved, but they are required by law to conduct their own investigations. We want to make sure we're always doing a thorough investigation, looking at all the information that's provided to us. And the key question is, can you completely rule out abuse, neglect, or exploitation? And again, that comes down to an unknown bruise on an arm. That's what we're trying to say in every situation. Can I reasonably conclude that this occurred outside of any abuse or neglect taking place? And would another reasonable person looking at the same information I'm looking at come up with the same conclusion? Again, we document our findings, we keep track of that, we keep that information in case we're ever asked for it. When our surveyor friends come in each year in the nursing home, they will pick a month and they will ask us for all the incident reports that were filed that month. We will give it to them and they will pick, 4 or 5 randomly off that list and look at everything that we compiled for those particular incidents. So something to consider for abuse. I mean, we obviously think of abuse, we think of physical abuse, hitting, slapping, hurting someone. There can be emotional abuse, not speaking nicely to them. There can be financial abuse if we, are not good stewards of their money and so forth. But one of the things that has become clear over the last few years is that to the Department of Health and the Area Agency on Aging, any deviation from the care plan in the nursing home or the support plan in the quarters is abuse. So that means if our care plan says resident will have the phone near them at all times so that we reduce the risk of them getting up and trying to answer it, and they have a fall and they have an injury and that phone wasn't near them, that's abuse, because we care planned that we would do that. If we care planned that they will be toileted every 2 hours and it's been 3 hours, that's a deviation from the care plan. So it's really important for any caregivers to know what is on those care plans and support plans. In the nursing home, we create CNA assignment sheets, which are like a snapshot of the care plan for everybody, but that's why it's really important that you know what's on those. The 3 areas that probably put us most at risk for abuse is transfer and ambulation statuses, diet textures, and fall precautions. Those are the areas where I'm going to say inadvertent abuse may occur. Transferring somebody with 1 assist when they're supposed to be a 2 assist and they fall and have an injury. That is abuse. Giving somebody the wrong diet texture when they're ordered something different and they cough and develop pneumonia. That's abuse. Again, fall precautions, anything that was supposed to be in place for that resident, if it wasn't in place and there was a bad outcome, that's considered abuse. Again, people always say, well, you know, Barb, it's residents' rights. Maybe Mr. Smith doesn't want a pureed diet with nectar thick liquids. And the answer is yes, it is their right to not have that particular diet and to have whatever diet texture that they want. There is a process, though, that we have to go through, and this includes both sides, of informing the doctor that the resident wants to make that choice. If the resident is competent, making sure they understand the risk of those decisions, making sure their family understands the risk of those decisions. We have all kinds of different dietary orders where somebody may be on a downgraded diet, but there are certain foods that they're allowed to have because they're things that they really like. For me, someday if I'm on puree, you're going to have to give me bacon. And you're not going to give me pureed bacon. So there are ways to make that happen for a resident. The other thing is we have to be sure that residents and staff are free from retaliation. This means if, for example, the resident that reported to me that staff were slapping them, we have to be sure that a staff member isn't going to go in and say to them, oh, so you tell the DON that I'm slapping you around, huh? Well, guess what? We're not having dinner tonight. Or any type of retaliation, even if it's that you start to treat the resident differently. If you make statements to them, well, you wanted to call your son tonight? Well, guess what? We're not doing that if you're going to tell people I slapped you around. The same is true of staff. As I said, we're all mandated reporters. So as an employee, you have to be free to say, you know what, I'm a dietary aide, I was up on the floor and I heard a resident say, please don't hit me. And I didn't see what was going on, but boy, I don't know. I need to look into that, I need to investigate that. It may be they're telling some story about a show they saw on TV, who knows. But there can't be any retaliation against that person for reporting it. If there's a retaliation, we will get rid of that staff person in a heartbeat. We have to be free to communicate that stuff to each other. Okay, so a couple scenarios here. Is this abuse? Mrs. Smith normally requires only a 1-person assist for transfers. Today she is complaining of pain in her left leg with difficulty bearing weight. The nurse instructs the staff on duty on day shift to use 2 people for transfers, gets a doctor's order, and notes the change on the assignment sheet and care plan. The evening shift is given this information in a report. However, that CNA feels that Mrs. Smith will do just fine with her. The CNA transfers Mrs. Smith with 1 assist. During the transfer, Mrs. Smith falls and breaks her hip. Is that abuse?
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, that CNA did not willfully want to hurt her. It's not like she said, I'm going to do this so that you'll fall and hurt yourself. She may have very well thought, I know this resident, I know how she transfers, I'm strong, I know we won't have any problems with this. It's not willful, but it doesn't have to be willful to be abuse. It was a deviation from the care plan. Again, the AAA would look at it that the person was aware of the change in care plan and they would also consider it abuse. Second scenario, Mr. Jones has an order for mechanical soft foods with nectar thick liquids. He is in the activities room enjoying a birthday party. Remember when we came to the activities room for birthday parties? I kind of remember that. He is alert and oriented and requests to have some punch, which is not thickened. The activity staff give him the punch and he chokes. He later develops pneumonia as a result of this incident, which required hospitalization. Is this abuse?
Yes.
Yep. We knew as an activities person that Mr. Jones was on Nectar Thick liquids, and we chose to give him thin liquids. Same with AAA. Giving him the thin liquids was a deviation from his care plan. And again, just to stress, he does have a right to refuse a change in that, but there's a process, and we have to go through that process in order to get him where he needs to be. I always say try thinking of food and fluids like medications. If I'm a resident and I'm in pain and I wheel myself up to Aaron's med cart and I say, I'm having a lot of pain in my back, I really need a Percocet. And Aaron looks and there's no order for Percocet. And she would not go, well, you know what, I can see you're having a lot of pain, so let me just give you one of those Percocets. There's a process. We got to call the doctor. We got to get an order. We got to get the med. So food and fluids are the same way. We can get there, but there's a process. All right, number 3. Mary Smith is a PRN CNA at the facility. She is filling in on an assignment that she's never had before. When she enters the room to take care of Mrs. Miller, she glances at her assignment sheet and notes that Mrs. Miller is a 1 assist for transfers. During a transfer out of bed, Mrs. Miller falls and breaks her hip. Is this abuse? No, because she was a 1 assist. As long as she did the transfer correctly, we'll put that in for a state of argument that she performed it correctly. Again, it wasn't willful. If she misread the assignment sheet and she was actually a 2 assist instead of a 1 assist, that would be considered abuse then. Even though she didn't willfully accidentally read the wrong thing, that's why I just can't stress enough that we have to know what residents' plan of cares are for folks.
If the resident insists on doing it, do you do it or you still have to wait for a report?
We still wait. Yep. Just a couple recapping things for this portion. We have to ensure that direct staff always have the most up-to-date information about a resident's needs. When we transcribe those orders, we have to make sure things like diet and transfers are updated right away. People need to know immediately when things like that change. When we're nurses working at night and we're chart checking these orders, we have to make sure that they've been changed in all the right places. We need to make sure that any changes are relayed to the next shift as well. Residents' rights are very important, however, we cannot go against physicians' orders. We are mandated reporters and must always report suspected abuse and neglect. We will suspend an employee during an investigation. All these steps have been put in place to ensure residents are safe. If you have someone who's committing abuse, till I can say that they're not, I don't want any other residents to be harmed in the process. And I always say, think if your loved one was here, that's what you would want to see happen. You would want to know that I can assure that nothing took place before I let that person to continue to be there. There are a bunch of different places we have to notify when we're made aware of abuse. Department of Health, Department of Human Services, AAA, and local law enforcement. We're required to do that. If you're involved in that incident and you go, Barb, my God, you called the police on me? I mean, like, come on. Yeah, I have to. Now, they can conclude that nothing happened, but I'm required to report it. Each of these agencies conduct their own independent investigation. Always, 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 always know what the plan of care is for residents. And if you don't know, ask. That's the important part. Any questions on abuse and neglect? All right, just a little bit on stress management. This is my stress management. This is how I get through the end of the week, and this is what helps me with my stress. Now, to a mom, this is all very stressful because there's so much more that you have to do. But as a Nana, this is how I deal with stress. I've been doing stress management at annual in-service for years and years and years and years. And as stressed as we all thought we were last year at this time, we had no idea how stressed we were going to be this year at this time working in a nursing home. It does not matter what position you do here at the facility, it's stressful. The COVID thing just ramped that up by 1,000. It makes no difference what department you're in. You are under a lot of stress when you come to work. All right, see if I can get this in.
Hit escape,
Escape?
then click on
I see it. I can be taught.
it. You have to hold control.
All right, see, now I'm gonna get this. It's gonna be painful, but.
I didn't realize PowerPoint was so challenging for everybody.
It's hit.
Okay. I still messed it up.
What are you doing?
I went on to another video. Oh God. Stop!
Keep looking to it.
Okay. I'm gonna start that one over. Okay. Audio difficulties. This gentleman is trying to print here. This is a blank piece of paper. I'll let you watch the rest of it. The old check the toner cartridge. Toner everywhere.
This is gonna be Josh.
I am just going to copy my computer screen.
And then he goes, well, Jeff, right?
I somehow think there might have been something else wrong with him.
Yeah, well, again, we are all stressed at work, and it really doesn't matter whether you're working with copiers or nursing.